Take one.
We pray.
We pray. Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of The Bible. Wait, what? Went a bit extra long on that one, didn't I?
That's fun.
But we had two takes on yesterday's episode, so we're hoping that all the green lights are going up and down, Phil, so I think we're okay.
That's good.
We're going to do 2 Samuel chapter 8 today.
Yes.
Talking about David's victories, I suppose, and him establishing not just his kingdom over Israel, but now his expanding the borders and expanding his influence around the region. Yeah,
yeah. So it's coming from a person who is more of a pacifist sort of mentality. As like, well, yeah, can be quite confronting.
Yes, it is. This is not gentle David playing his harp, sitting on the side of the hill. This is David ripping a lion's mouth, ripping a lion apart by the mouth.
Yes,
that's kind of what we're talking about here, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's like always trying to remember this is the context of back in those days of how they established themselves.
Yes, a normal part of life was military conquest.
Yeah,
which isn't good. But it is. We've got to honour the context of the time. We can't sit in judgment on the scriptures with the benefit of 2,000 years of history behind us, because if we were there, we would have been doing the same thing.
Oh, well and truly.
Yeah, because that's all they knew.
Yeah.
So it was a normal practice to have this whole concept of expansion of kingdoms and buffer zones and all that kind of stuff. I mean, basically, it's not that different to what Israel's trying to do, creating buffer zones around themselves in the West Bank today. It's still the same sort of thing. It's I will expand. They do it through, I'm not going to say peaceful. It's not. They're not marching to 2/3 of all the Palestinians in the city of off the side of the hill. But I'd say it's not peaceful. It's still expansion by force and expansion by settlement.
Yeah,
which is, and Russia and Ukraine. These sorts of things. These are, most people throughout most of history have lived in seasons of conflict and conquest and expansion and contraction. It's just the way. Even most of Europe's borders today aren't more than 100 years old, because they. And many of the nations and regions of Europe during the Middle Ages, they're gone now. They don't exist anymore. The borders have changed. It's just been a normal part of life. It's just we've lived in probably the first time in history, and only really in the West, where the borders are relatively stable. Certainly compared to most of history. Yeah. I mean, that's why we're talking about Russia and Ukraine. Go back 300 years, and across Europe, there's a dozen of those border skirmishes happening at any given time. So that's why it stands out to us, because of the fact that it's just not common practice anymore. But it was. So let's just honour that and go, that's just, I don't agree with it, but it's just the way it was in that time. Yeah. And that's a good preamble as we read this chapter, because like you said, it's confronting.
Yeah. And being only ever lived in Australia, I haven't experienced that, and don't have, I would say, grandparents or great-grandparents who, probably went through those sorts of border skirmishes. Yep. Yes, my grandparents lived through the Second World War in England, through the Blitz and all that.
That's a little bit of it.
But, ultimately their land still remained within the British Empire. It wasn't taken over by Germany, so that's sort of...
But French people experienced that. Yeah. Belgian people experienced that. That's right. Lots of Europe was annexed by either Hitler or Mussolini, wasn't it, during that time? Yeah. This is sort of a eyes wide open sort of experience for me. So I think that's a really good way to say it. Eyes wide open. Just avoid the risk of sitting in judgment and dismissing it, and realise that let's put ourselves in this story and realise what it must have been like to have nations around you that are surrounding you. Yeah. Let's take the Israel situation right now. It's easy, and I'm not saying we shouldn't. I personally think we should be calling Israel to account for some of its behaviour, but I also am aware that they live surrounded by enemies, some of them stating that they want them to not exist. So I can understand my human nature, how I would feel if I felt like I was being attacked to that degree. And I can understand how the Palestinians feel that way because it's a human nature. It's not an Israel-Gaza, Israel-Palestine thing or any other Russia-Ukraine thing or anything. I think it's the problem with the way the world is when humans sin and power play is at work. So let's just honour that, and as we read this, try to put ourselves in that story, and because there's always something we can extract. All Scripture is God-breathed. So let's get to the end of this quite vivid passage, and let's see if there's something we can pull out of it for us. We'll see as we get there. Okay.
So David, he says, subdued the Philistines, the land of Moab, and this one's a bit confronting because he gets the people to lie down on the ground in a row and measures them off in groups, and measures off two-thirds and executes them, and then subdues the other people to make them part of his
Slave
slaves.
force.
Yeah.
So he lays and he basically kills two of every three people lying on the ground. You know what that sounds like to me? That does not sound that different to German Nazi practice in the gas chambers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like light them up in cattle carts, basically, isn't it? So this is King David doing this,
who we think is wonderful and perfect.
So what can we get out of that? We can get that none of us. And Jeff Baxter and I were talking about this when we were doing the Gospel of John, is that God willingly blinds some of us to our own sin for a period of time, because if he showed us all the things we were doing wrong, we'd be guilty of a whole lot more, because we might not do that, but where might we sit in judgment on others? I don't think we should sit there we're supposed to sit there and go, this isn't good, but we're also supposed to sit there and go, where do I single out 2/3 of the people and treat them differently to the other third?
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
I think we can learn from that if we come at it with that humble heart and see that we might be just as guilty of doing the same kind of thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I definitely can say I haven't killed anybody,
No.
but I have dismissed people.
Yeah. And that's just the same root. Jesus says, you know, if you hate your brother, that's the root of evil, the root of murder.
Killing.
Yeah. Because it all ultimately comes from the same issue inside our heart. And so, let's just approach it with a degree of humility rather than sit in judgment on it.
David, with taking over lands, he set up his own garrisons in places, and so he set up his own rule in the Armenes, Damascus.
So and Damascus is modern day Syria, so he's expanding to the regions around his territory, and some of them he's conquering, and then he's putting, his standard practice, military practice. Put garrisons in there to keep the peace. He's building an empire, really. Yeah. We wouldn't call it an empire because the great empires come several hundred years later. We get Persia and Babylon and so on. They come later. But it's the beginning of that.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to his son Solomon, that expands even more. Israel has never been as big ever as it was under the reign of Solomon.
True.
And then it began to contract again. But it has that same concept of standard practice. Put a garrison in there, tax the people, let the people fight for you, call them. And it was very, I think talked about this in previous episodes somewhere on the line, the kind of way this would work is there would be vassal kings. So sometimes they would just annex it and they become part of their land. Sometimes they'd let the kingdom stay as it was, but they'd put a king in there who was in an agreement with the chief king.
Yeah.
And they were a vassal, which basically says you'll pay taxes, and if someone comes to your border, you're a buffer zone, you'll let us know, we'll come and fight for you, but if I call you, you come fight for me. And it's very clear who's the superior king and who isn't. And that's kind of what's happening here.
Yeah.
It's a normal practice.
Normal practice. And as well as then from verse 9 onwards, it was like, he actually sets up agreements with the other kingdoms.
Yeah, this is a vassal-king relationship. Yeah. Exactly. King Toy of Hamath heard that David had destroyed the entire army. He sent his son Joram to congratulate him. What is he doing? He's just buttering him up because he doesn't want to be the next one.
Don't want to be taken over. Yeah.
Exactly. So he's prepared to come and bring gold and silver and bronze and standard political practice. I mean, we might not do it in that way today, but this kind of principle happens behind the doors of Parliament House all the time.
Yeah. Well, it was. I was just thinking, it's like you've got your embassies around the world, and you give gifts to every ruling party. It's like whoever comes, you give them a gift, and it's the politics.
There's nothing new under the sun, Philip.
No,
it's still the same.
It is.
Yeah. But David, obviously had expanded and got a degree of security during this time. And ultimately gets to the son, his name's Solomon. His son is named Solomon, which Shalom, which means peace. So he had expanded to the point where Solomon, his son, was able to experience a degree of peace for a time. Yeah.
And it keeps saying that God was in control. God was helping him. God was there. Wherever David went, it was God made David victorious. So we're like, well, he was doing what God was wanting him to do at that stage. Working with the people.
For sure.
Yeah.
And David reigned over all of Israel, verse 15, and did what was just and right for all his people.
Yeah.
It's a little snippet. In the middle of all of this, there's this sense in which he's still, it might seem unfair and wrong that he's doing those things. And in the grand scheme of things, it was. But David was being marked out here as different to what normal kings did, which was use the people for their own purposes. David's a different kind of king. This is a king who is serving.
Yeah.
He's an under-shepherd. He exists to serve his people rather than his people serve him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is in the picture of Jesus. That's what Jesus says in John 14, you've seen me, you call me Lord and Master, and rightly so, but that's what I am, but you should go and do what I've done. You should serve.
And probably just the other thing is David's land was becoming big, and so he was setting up a structure of government to help him.
He's got a cabinet here.
Yeah.
Historians and what's he got? Priests, secretaries, captains of the bodyguard.
Yeah.
All your standard.
Secretary. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much everything you would expect to need to govern a community of people. Yeah.
And you think back to Moses when he first brought the people out of Egypt. Moses was wearing himself out by trying to judge everybody and rule on everything. And so he was told to,
Jethro said to him,
it's
not working.
Point some leaders to do it.
Good point. And that's what David's doing here. Yeah. And this is necessary in life.
Yeah.
This is necessary at governmental level, like national level, state level, local level, church level. Even though we might not always get it right, there's a reason we have governance because it brings order.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
And everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, that's right. And that gives alignment.
Yeah.
If we don't have alignment, we won't have synergy. We'll have anarchy, yeah. Everyone, like judges, everyone will do what was right in their own eyes, and it was a mess.
Yeah.
And this is the beginning of a sense of order and structure. I like that. That's good. And the New Testament picks up on that. It talks about order and structure in the church for the same reason. Because alignment brings synergy. One of you will put 1,000 to flight, two of you will put 2,000 to flight. If you don't have alignment, you won't have synergy. You won't have that structure. You won't have the strength. Yeah.
Like a threefold cord is not easily broken.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that's right. So that's just a normal part of what he's doing. So this is a normal rhetoric that you see. This is in the language too. This is a chapter is about David establishing his kingdom, and you see this all through the books of the Old Testament. Yeah. A person comes to power. One of the first things they generally do is they'll solidify their stance. Yeah. So they'll go and hunt out all of the potential threats to their throne, and it's usually like cousins, bastard children, all that kind of stuff, and take them out. And that happened during the Middle Ages, and you see Henry VIII was renowned for this kind of stuff. This was a normal practice. Any threat to the throne, the whole Elizabeth and Mary and thing, Queen Elizabeth and Mary, Queen of Scots, and all that. This is just normal power play that they would go and single out their threats. But Jesus would say, "Don't be like that.
No,
serve. Don't rule. Don't use your power to strengthen your own stance. Use your power to strengthen others." It's an upside down kingdom. Challenging, not always easy to do, especially if we feel threatened. But it's a different style of life to use our power to bless our enemies.
Yes.
Rather than try to take them out or discredit them. Wow. Preach that to yourself, Rohan. That's good. That's really good. Anything else there?
That's enough in that one.
All right. We're going to go to chapter 9 for our next episode, which is a cool story.
It is.
Mephibosheth. Yep.
Yeah. Say
all
that
right.
one 2 times.
Yes, say that one. We'll talk to you tomorrow, everyone. Thanks.
Okay. Bye. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bible. Wait, what? Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And you can also find us on all the socials. Just search The Bible. Wait, what? And to find out more about our church, just search C3 Camden, C3 Picton, or C3 Thirroul on the web or on the socials. Thanks for being with us today, and we look forward to talking to you on the next episode of The Bible. Wait, what?